Hi, my name is Jennifer House with First Step Nutrition, and this is your video portion of the Baby Food Making 101 e-course. So in the audio and resources section, I cover a lot more of the how-to starting solids, but I wanted to make a video as well to actually show you how you can make your own baby food. So today we're going to make some sweet potato. We have some applesauce, and we're going to make ground beef. And I'll talk a little bit about making your own beans as well as cereals. So to start off, you have to prepare. So of course, make sure your hands are washed, your equipment's clean. If you're using fresh produce, you want to take the peel off if you're making a starter baby food. And cut it up, just dice it up into little pieces. If you're using frozen produce, you just open the bag, it's really easy. If you're using anything in a can, such as beans, you would just open the can and I'd put it in a strainer and just rinse it under cold water to make sure there's no added salt or anything left in there. If you're preparing meat, you can just trim the meat of any extra fat, dice it up. Today I'm just using ground beef. You can also use ground bison, so you don't have to do anything to prepare that. So the next step after you're all ready to go would be to cook the food. So there's a variety of different ways. So anything canned doesn't have to be cooked. For fresh produce, I like to steam it. So what I've done is I have used a microwave steamer. So I've just added my sweet potatoes and then a little bit of water, maybe just 2 tablespoons or so. Pop the lid on and microwave, took about 4 minutes or so, which I have done here, so I didn't have to run off on you guys. And then you can see that it's very tender, so you want to cook it to the point where it's easy to mash, really easy to puree and mush up. So those are my sweet potatoes. Another way you can cook the produce is on the stove. So I like to use a steamer basket like this, and then you just put your cut produce up in here and then add a little bit of water, a couple tablespoons, maybe a 1/4 cup, so that your produce isn't sitting in the water. Because what happens when we boil fruit or vegetables is some of the vitamins, like vitamin C, are water soluble, so they'll leach out into the water. So it's best to steam, either on the stove or in the microwave if you can. And I have the baby breza going there with my peeled and chopped apples. So that actually steams itself. So you add a bit of water to the equipment and then it steams, and we'll probably hear it puree in about 10 minutes once the apples are done steaming. And then for the beef, I like cooking meat in a pot. So I have a big pot of boiling water back here, and I'm going to add my meat to that. And it takes about, 10 minutes or so to cook the ground meat. I have a thermometer so I can check that as well. And it was a little bit frozen on me, so it may take a few more minutes today. So we'll let the meat cook. And the reason I like boiling my meat is I find it adds a little more moisture to the meat. So you can certainly fry or bake, whatever you prefer. Crock pot's another good method to cook meat to make sure that it's really moist and tender. So the next step would be to puree. So you can use any piece of equipment. Of course, there's machines out there like the Baby Bullet, the Baby Breza that are really convenient. For the amount of time your baby's on purees, they're really not necessary. If you have a blender, even a hand blender, a food processor, those all work great. So I'm going to use the food processor to blend up my sweet potatoes today. So I just dump them in there along with the water that I cooked it in. And since this is a starter food, I'm going to have to add quite a bit more water. So the more fluid you add, the more fine that your puree will be. So let's see. Put in, that's maybe 1/3 cup or so. And if you have pumped breast milk, or if you use formula, you can add formula as well instead of the water. It adds a little more nutrition as opposed to the water. As well, your baby's probably used to the taste of breast milk, so it may be a little bit of an easier introduction to solids with them if the food has a little bit of that familiar taste. looks pretty good. It's a little thicker. This might be a slight step up from the runnier kind of starter puree that you would want. So I would probably add a couple tablespoons more water to that and then blend it up a bit more. There we go. So you want it the consistency that's almost pourable. So there we go. There's some of our sweet potatoes. Really nice bright orange color, lots of vitamin A and vitamin C in that. And I'm going to cook my beef today once it's done in the Vitamix. It's the most powerful piece of equipment I have. I also use that if I'm making my own baby cereal. I'd put my rice in there, although any blender or food processor will blend up the softer grains such as oats. So if we talk for a minute about making your own baby cereal, I do get questions a lot about that. So let's see. I have some boxed baby cereals here from the store. So this is a good brand, and you want to make sure that you check the ingredients if you do choose to buy your cereal at the store. So this contains, oats and a few added vitamins and minerals. So the main purpose of the cereal is the added iron. This banana raisin oatmeal probably wouldn't be a starter cereal as it has a few ingredients in there. But just make sure you do choose the whole grain instead of refined. And one of the benefits of the store-bought cereals is they do contain the iron. So you want your baby's first starter foods to contain lots of iron, as that's their main nutrient they need when you're starting solids. And I talked a little more in the audio how I actually prefer to start with foods. So the meats, egg yolks, beans, fish, any of the food sources of iron. The meat sources of iron are best absorbed. The iron in fortified cereals is not quite as well absorbed, but one of the things I find with my clients is it tends to cause the babies to be constipated quite quickly, the iron in these cereals. So if you want to go with making your own baby cereal, really easy to do, just blend it into a fine powder and keep that in your pantry. And when you're ready to cook it, take out a few tablespoons and cook it just like you would a regular oatmeal, regular rice. Add some water and boil it or microwave until it's cooked, and it's as easy as that. But just be aware that these homemade cereals shouldn't be your baby's mainstay as they don't contain iron. You have to make sure that they're getting other dietary sources of iron each day as well. You can fortify your own cereals. Your pharmacist will sell iron drops called Fair and Sol. But I would check with your doctor or dietitian first to make sure you have the amounts correct, as your baby can certainly get too much iron as well. And then again, a disadvantage of that would be possible constipation. So that's a little bit about the cereals. And I have all of these recipes as well, including the cereal. I've uploaded them into the resources section of this course. If you're looking for more recipes, this is a good cookbook that I've just come out with, along with Melissa from Ween Green, who makes these baby cubes. She's also from Calgary. So it has lots of good pictures, lots of great starter recipes, as well as some recipes moving into family friendly recipes as well. It's called Cookbook for Weaners, and you can get it on Amazon or for your Kindle. So I guess I wanted to mention beans as well. Well, my meat is still cooking. Maybe I'll check it. So beans are also a good starter food. They're high in protein. They contain some iron as well. So all I would do with these beans is, like I mentioned earlier, I would just rinse them. And then I would add them to my food processor with a little bit of breast milk or water and blend them up into a puree, and that's it. And these make a great starter finger food as well. So once your baby's interested in picking things up on their own, definitely by 9 months. Could be as early as, 6, 7, 8 months. Black beans are nice and small, and they should be able to get them into their mouth, so they're good for that as well. So the beef looks like it's almost done here. So you could pour this whole pot right into a colander as well to get out all of the meat. I'm just scooping out a few chunks for us today. So for the ground meat, obviously you want to make sure there's no pink left, and to check that it is cooked, you want to cook the beef to 170 degrees Fahrenheit or 77 degrees Celsius. Yeah, it's cooked. And then I'm just going to throw this into my Vitamix. Looks like our baby breast is busy steaming up there. And again, I'd put fluid in here, so either your breast milk formula or water. Again, the more fluid you add, the finer your puree will be. So to progress the texture, the next time you make these foods, just add a little bit less fluid. Maybe don't blend it quite as long, and then you'll get some lumps left in there, which is a good thing for your baby. Also with the apples, pears, sweet potatoes, you can also leave the peels on them for stage 2 foods. So that provides a little more fiber as well as texture. And I have to plug it in. Good first step. There we go. And we have what looks like a meat milkshake. There we go. So that's fairly thin. Could be a little bit thicker as well, but you can see it totally pureed up. That's one thing people question about making your own meat is, you know, does it actually blend up fine enough? And it definitely does. So I also wanted to mention not to make too much of one stage or one puree at once, since your baby will only be on that stage of puree for a very limited time. But if you do have leftovers, you can always throw the fruit purees into any smoothies, mix them with yogurt or a warm cereal like oatmeal. If you have leftover vegetable purees, you can add them into any of your hot family dishes like a spaghetti sauce or casserole or soup. So our next step with these baby foods would be to store them. So if you're going to use these within 3 days, you can store them in your fridge. Otherwise, you'll want to put them into your freezer. So there are a few different ways to freeze your baby food. There goes our apples. Stop that. That looks blended up enough for us. So there are a few different ways to freeze your baby foods. So in these Ween Green cubes, you can just pop the lid on and throw them into the freezer. You can also use a cookie sheet and take, tablespoons of your food at a time and dab it onto the cookie sheet, throw that in the freezer. And then once it's frozen, just pop those off the cookie sheet and into a plastic bag or container. Or you can use an ice cube tray. With lids, they're great, or just covered in saran. And so here's our apples, and then you just pop the lid on this and freeze it. Do make sure that you label your baby food, the date you made it and what it is. Lots of baby foods tend to look quite similar, the purees. I remember my sister fed my nephew concentrated orange juice instead of sweet potatoes, and he loved it, but just to make sure that you do label them. And then into your deep freeze for up to 6 months, into the freezer portion of your fridge for 2 to 3 months. And then to serve them from the freezer, you can either defrost in the fridge, so leave them in the fridge for a day or two. You can put them into a pot of boiling water to heat them up, or of course the microwave as well. With the cubes, you can just pop the lid off and microwave them like that. If you do use the microwave, make sure you stir the food really well before you serve it to your baby, because it can create hot spots in the food. And then I wouldn't feed your baby directly from the container. So take out the portion that you think they're gonna eat, and then feed that to them. If they want more, of course, you can certainly go get more. If they don't want to eat it, that's okay. You can just throw it out. You don't want to reserve your baby that food. or serve from the same jar multiple times, as the bacteria from the spoon can contaminate the rest of the food. So that's serving it. If it is a little bit too runny once you thaw it, you can add a little bit of baby cereal or mashed banana or yogurt to thicken it up. Or if it's too thick, of course, you can just add a little more of your fluid, like your breast milk or water to it. So one other thing that I wanted to mention quickly is what to look for when you are buying baby foods at the store, because you may not make all of your own baby foods, and that's okay. So I would definitely check the ingredients. I purchased this really quickly one day. I thought it was prunes, and it turns out it's strained blueberry dessert. So for 6 months and up, it just contains some sugar, some cream, you know, things your 6 months doesn't need. So look for added salt, avoid added sugar, any preservatives, any colors. Your baby doesn't need that. Baby Gourmet is a good brand, also from Calgary. It's just fruit and vegetables, so no added preservatives or sweeteners. And these bags are quite popular now. They're easy to throw in your diaper bag. They don't, you know, break like the glass. Your baby can suck right out of them. But you do most of the time want to be sure that you're feeding your baby with a spoon or letting them feed themselves with a spoon or their fingers, just so that they develop those chewing and swallowing skills. So that's it. So we made a few different baby foods today. You can see how easy it is. So have fun. And if you have any more questions, you can email me, jen@firststepnutrition.com.